Welcome everyone to the feeling of entirety or wholeness, one of the four brothers of art. I'm Lisa Dalton. This is the NMCA way, Michael Chekhov, and we are here with my colleague and co-founder of the National Michael Chekhov Association, Wil Kilroy, who's going to get us launched.
Hey there, Wil Kilroy, and I'm going to start us out, if you've been following us, with looking at your hand again. So we're thinking of sense of wholeness and entirety. So what I'd like you to do first is just look at that little microcosm of your hand that is your fingernail. And look how that fingernail has a sense of wholeness to that nail. The cuticle, the top part, that has a sense of wholeness. But then you realize that if you start looking down, it goes into the whole finger. So you can look at your whole finger with a sense of wholeness. So that's got a completeness, a sense of entirety to your finger, but then it's also part of your entire hand. So now look at your entire hand and experience that sense of wholeness in your hand. And we could go on and on with this sense of wholeness because you could see the hand as part of the arm, as part of the whole body. So wholeness depends on how you're looking at it. And what we're going to do now with that hand is move your hand, start in stillness, and then make a complete motion with your hand, whatever it is, and then stop. And hold that for a count of 3. In the NMCA way, we like to call it the law of triplicity, where we use that law. And with this, just holding for a count of 3 gives us that sense of wholeness, of entirety. And then start again, move your hand again. So you're now at the beginning point, you move it, you're in the middle, and then come to some sort of ending point. Hold that, silently thinking of that count of 3, and you've come to an end point. So you're now creating the sense of wholeness with the way you move your hand. So one more time, you're beginning, you move it, you come to an end point, and you pause for a count of 3, experiencing that sense of wholeness, a beginning, a middle, and an end point. And then just grab an object that's near you. So you've got an object, and start with that object being stationary, but then start a movement with that object. So now you're in the middle, and then come to an end point with that object, wherever it is, and pause for a 3 count. So now you've experienced a sense of wholeness, but then it's going to continue again, moving. You had a beginning, you're in the middle, and come to an end point, and pause again. So you can apply this in all different ways, which I'm sure we'll talk about after this, but I want to continue this little bit of practice with a sense of wholeness and entirety. So I'm going to kick it over to Jeffrey.
Okay, everybody, so here's what we're going to do now. We are going to move a mountain together, but we're going to start small. Begin with just in your palm of your hand, imagine a pebble. And with your finger, put all your focus on moving that pebble. Move that pebble all the way to the tips of your fingers, and then flick it off. Let's build on that now, and we're gonna move a rock. With your hands, imagine that you are moving a rock about the size of a softball, and begin to move that rock. Using your whole body, your entire self, move that rock. And push it away. Now we're gonna get up on our feet, and we're gonna move a boulder. I invite you to get up on your feet, and imagine you've got a large boulder in front of you with your whole entire body. Let's move that boulder. Push that boulder. Engage your legs in the pushing, and engage your arms in the pushing, and push that boulder away. Now the last part of this is going to take everybody working together, because now you're going to imagine a mountain in front of you. Look at that mountain and really picture all the pieces of it. Start from the ground and build that mountain up high above the sky in the clouds. And you see that whole mountain. Together, we're all gonna push that mountain. But it's gonna take all of us and our entire bodies. So, on the count of 3, begin to move that mountain. 1, 2, 3. Whew, all right. And shake that off. Thank you very much, mountain movers. Nice job.
This has to do with physical restrictions.
We're going to move on now to flying back over that and discussing
and
our
what I'm learning about physical restrictions is that if I can move my leg like you moved a mountain, that it strengthens my hips and the other leg. And so this is one of the things, not knowing what you guys do, but that I do every morning is I stand on one leg. I still have to have support. You can stand on one leg. And I move a rock, in my case, as far as that leg will go. And then I have to move my support. The idea is my foot is not don't point your toe. You have to have your foot like it's flat, only it's up in the air. And you push as hard as you can to get that boulder away from you. And that's something I do every morning, not realizing that it was, to me, it's strengthening my hips, but it is on my feet, which that's what attracted me to you guys.
I have 2 little exercises. The first one, I would like I would like you to move, and then when I say stop, I would like you to be moving. You can be on your feet if you'd like, or if you want to be seated, you can stay seated and but think if you're seated also that you are moving your whole body. So you're changing how your toes are, everything. And just for a moment, begin with imagining that you're going to move. And when I say stop, I want you to stop your whole body. Okay? And then I'll guide you from there. So move and stop and pause for a moment and think, what am I doing here? Am I something in the room? I'm going to reach for something in the room. I feel I'm going to reach for something in the room. So I'm going to start to do that. When I say go, I want you to begin to do an activity you thought of doing here. Okay, I'm going to touch the board over here. And go, stop. Maybe you got there, maybe you didn't. How does it feel if you didn't get all the way there? You're in a new position now, a new form. This is a new beginning. With this new beginning, imagine a complete action in the opposite direction. Decide what it is. You can even say what it is out loud. I'm going to turn my back and lift my arm to the camera, my armpit to the camera. And go, stop. New position. What am I doing? A new action. How did it feel that I didn't get to finish my old action? Okay, I'm going to decide that was a work of art all by itself. And a new action. What's a new action? Take it in a very different direction. I'm going to go down. Going to go down to something on my desk. And go, stop. And release that. Good, good. And now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, if you're up on your feet, I'd like you to try to take one clear sequence of movement where you move from where you are in one clear sequence of movement to the chair and settle back in front of the camera. And I'm not going to tell you when to go, but I'd like you to feel when you make the decision inside, I now begin. And move, and when you hit your final position, make your ending position very clear to yourself. No more movement after that. And I'm going to switch the camera to each of you for a moment. So hold or sustain that final position. So find yourself in your readiness. And when you're ready, you know it, you decide, you begin. And release.
So, I would like to suggest a very interesting exercise that maybe contain its all. The feeling of ease, the feeling of beauty, the feeling of form, and the feeling of the whole. And but I really think of it as the feeling of the whole exercise. So you can do it with your students or to yourself. You need to stand on the side of the stage or space that you're working on, and you need to establish where is the middle of the space, and you're going out. You need to be very relaxed, at ease, and very in a neutral position, not thinking about anything, not doing anything, just in a very neutral stance. And when you feel you're really empty or neutral, then you're doing 6 or 7 steps to the middle of the space. So neutral, and then here I'll stop here, but you have a larger space. And you're going to turn to the audience, and you're looking at them, and after a few seconds you're just going out and into a voice and body improvisation. It doesn't have to be logical. It's not textual, it's not with text, and you need to do something with your body and voice. Yeah, you can do this, I don't know, you can do, but the thing is, you can't plan it. You need it to come in the moment. And you're doing it, and then it stops. You're looking at everybody, and you're turning, and you're going in neutral, the 3-5 steps outward. So if I'm going to do it when let's try it, and I'm at neutral. okay, that's the spirit of it, and you need to go out from the other side. Of course, I don't have the space here, but it works on everything, everything, and you need to wrap this up. Really, you can't work this, do this thing, and then and go out. No, you need to do it and then close it. Feel that this came to an end, and look at everybody and be neutral and go out neutral. There's a lot to talk about in this. It's timing. It's going inside your artistic world, an artistic body, artistic event, closing it off. It's a very interesting improvisation, free your mind, and it's a very, very profound and interesting. I think it's a Japanese exercise, so I hope you'll have a blast with it.
So thank you. Thank you so much for our little section of Chekhov on your feet with a feeling of entirety or wholeness. We're going to move on now to flying back over that and discussing our exciting activities of understanding the role of a feeling of entirety and the whole as it affects us as artists and as human beings. So, Wil, would you like to launch into some comments?
Well, I'll launch in going off of your exercise. So hopefully, if you were following along with us, when Lisa stopped you and you weren't able to achieve that endpoint, you might have felt a little bit of frustration. You might have felt a sense of being incomplete. And that's what you can leave an audience with if you're not filling your performance with this sense of entirety, or as a director, if you're not thinking about the whole play and the sense of entirety and the what you're trying to communicate to the audience, all of that. So I think that was a great exercise to feel that. And hopefully you're experiencing, Charlotte did it, I did it, physically too, when you don't complete a movement with the whole body that you're trying to bring across, that it can give you that sense of being incomplete. So I think that was a great example of what this tool can do if you really are approaching things, thinking about a sense of entirety and wholeness, and seeking that sort of resolution to whatever it is you're working on.
Yeah, when I was doing that exercise, Lisa, what struck me as you paused us was how I was leading that action. And when I was thinking, when I was just moving, it all came from my feeling forces. And then as soon as you gave me a specific action to do, my head took over and my thinking forces started to make me lean. I physically leaned over a lot more, leading with my head towards where I was going. And as I was frozen or paused, I was able to check in and say, well, why are you so leaned over like that? And it's because I was thinking about it. So I thought that was really interesting.
I was totally in my head. I did not have any, I could feel it in my chest, but it was really tight. And I was just thinking, how am I going to do this? Just thinking. And I know that that's not the goal. I need to get out of this head. And so that was a great exercise for me, thinking all the time. That was really a great exercise. I'm glad I did that. That'll help me, to get out of this thinking mode all the time, worrying mode all the time. Yeah.
That's one of the things that's so exciting when we understand this feeling of entirety or wholeness and its power over us. We can ask ourselves, what is whole or entire? What is it we're speaking about? And we're talking a great deal about the concept of the form. As Wil was saying, is the form of the play or the form of the movement, the form of the what happens when we don't complete a word, right? The form of the speech, and what happens to the person who comes to a dead stop at a spot, not completing the sentence, and what happens to the spectator in that moment. So in that moment when I came to a stop, what happened inside of you? Anyone?
Oh, I just reached out. I did. I said, I'm going to help you somehow. Yeah. Yeah.
A sense of discomfort, dis-ease.
Yes.
There was not the ease there. Yeah.
A feeling of wanting to help, a feeling,
Yeah.
like Charlotte said, of wanting to reach out.
Very good, very good. So isn't it interesting how a lack of entirety can activate a gesture in the spectator? And it's for the person who gets caught in that stuck word, they can't get themselves complete, and or we experience this all the time in this medium, don't we, when we get a freeze, I don't know, and we're like, yes, what, when will they come back? And it shows up all of the time in minor events in our life when a cell phone call is dropped, or even here I started to speak and I was on mute, right? And so we were missing a piece, we were missing the sound. And so the form of communication was not whole, was not entire. And as Wil said, and both of you said, it creates this sense of uneasiness, and which of course the feeling of ease is one of our 4 brothers. And you can start to see the correlation between a feeling of ease and a feeling of entirety. And the whole universe seeks wholeness. It has a driving sense to complete things, and to complete a circle of life, to create a dynamic flow that has a process to it where we experience a sense of completion. And in the exercise, the stop and go exercise of not completing the action, when we have in our mind every day tasks that we want to do and think we should do or might do, and how many of them do we actually get done, and what does the failure to complete those tasks do to us? So any responses on that? Undone to-do lists?
I read something the other day that what we're creating is a whole brain full of yellow sticky notes of things that we have to do. That's not original, but that really, I said, yeah, I've got all these yellow sticky notes of all these incompletion things.
The issue of shows closing or being postponed, it's causing so much heartache and so much unresolved feelings with the companies. My students, for instance, were not able to complete their spring musical, and so we've been meeting online the best that we can to try to keep the energy, the wholeness of the community together, because we don't want that to fracture or split. And so when you think about that entirety, there is the connection with each other that we sometimes fear that we miss by not being next to each other, not being able to hold each other's hand or hug.
It's this condition that we're in this time of the pandemic is a brilliant example of a loss of wholeness. It's an interesting example of a feeling of entirety in that it has impacted the entire globe. So because of its entirety and its level of as a pandemic versus an epidemic, it actually created some kind of community sense globally, this sense of lack of ability to interact wholly and directly with each other on the micro level has, so that lack of wholeness has created a feeling of whole somewhere else. And that's kind of interesting.
Well, along those lines, I think it's also created a sense of wholeness, hopefully within smaller communities. I know where I live, where you can socially distance and, go out and at least say something or drop something off to someone and walk away and let them pick it up. So people have been baking and trading baked goods or whatever it is in this complex. And, so I see that it's created this sense of wholeness that wasn't there before, because we are all one and people are realizing we're all in the same situation dealing with this. So I think that's been a real positive outcome to this pandemic.
I think your exercise with the hand of just sort of beginning with a part of it and as the whole fingernail, and seeing the whole fingernail as a whole, and then the whole finger as a whole, then the hand, it's seeing this little microcosm, and the larger it grows to the macrocosm, we're feeling that sense of that each person is like a fingernail or a finger or a hand in relation to humanity. We are just one part of that, but we are connected to the whole. I mean, our fingernail isn't going to run off and say, "Hey, I'm flying solo here." It's not going to last very long with that, and nor will we as individuals if we disconnect ourselves from the larger whole. So that's a metaphor that I saw when you were working with that, Wil.
I also want to bring up the wonderfulness of this training with what you were doing in stopping us. And as Charlotte or Jeffrey said, then you start thinking too much. But the more you train in this, when you do pause and you didn't get there, you totally accept it and decide, as Lisa said, that was a little work of art in itself. Maybe I didn't get to that full reach, but that's all right. I can accept this. And I can move on and I can go somewhere else with it now. Maybe I don't get where I thought I would be, but I'm somewhere. And that's a little work of art. And I think that's part of Michael Chekhov's technique about every little thing you do is a work of art. It has beauty to it. It has, like the fingernail, a sense of wholeness, even if you only did that little part of it. And I think that if we can grow to appreciate that about ourselves, the efforts that we do make, some come to completion, some end up somewhere else, but if we can accept where they end up, you create a much more artistic and beautiful life that way. So just wanted to point that out.
I think that's one of the most central reasons to really embrace this feeling of entirety, and that is to be able to choose to perceive the little chunk that, as Wil was saying, that the little chunk, this is a whole. And perhaps I was aiming for here, I got to here, where's the beauty here? Can I be at ease with the form of this condition just as it is? I worked for a year and a half on a big 2-foot by 3-foot puzzle with very small puzzle pieces, very, very intricate, and it didn't actually match the picture on the box. So the outer frame was not on the picture on the box. And so it took me a long, long time to create the outer frame, which is one of the ways that a person can work on a jigsaw puzzle. And when I got the last piece of that frame, I had such a celebration of a feeling of wholeness on it. Well, the puzzle was actually too big to fit the table it was on, so I put a piece of board underneath the tablecloth to make it bigger, and it got knocked over, and one whole side of the frame fell on the floor, and one piece is missing. The corner piece is now missing. And I had to really, that was like, oh wow, this is my feeling of the whole. My feeling of entirety is really, really, being pushed here. I'm having to struggle with this process. And I, finally accepted that this piece it had existed. It is no longer, I don't know, it got vacuumed up or something. And I continued to work on the puzzle, and then it was kind of like my life shifted, but I was not going to stop until I got all the rest of the pieces. So almost 2 years. And finally the other day I was like, you know what, you're not going to finish this. So I packed it up and put it away, because I realized I was complete with what it was there. And it was just my will force that was going, you're going to finish this. And it was causing so many difficulties in terms of trying to protect my feeling of the whole puzzle, that this is what I want to lead to, is it's a great idea to check in with yourself, especially with those. I love the image of the sticky notes, Charlotte. Thank you. The sticky notes in your head or wherever they are, that it is possible to set a small goal of, let me just read one sticky note and see if I can move it forward today. I don't have to do the whole pile in my head. I could just work on one little sticky note. So the interesting thing is to check in with your whole energy system and see, when you think about this sticky note, is there a feeling of uneasiness? Is this lack of completion you're perceiving creating uneasiness? Is there a certain ugly feeling around it? And then go ahead and do it. You know, do one little thing and then stop afterwards and check in with your feeling of ease. And for the ones that you're not ready to deal with, make friends with the form that they're in as the perfect form. Like the corner piece is gone and it's perfect the way that is, so that we can choose to look at any shape or form and see it as a whole entire piece itself. Jeffrey, I loved your mountain, your working through that sequence of beginning, middle, ends, and what we would call crescendoing in size. Would you talk to us a little bit about your generation of that, how you came up with that?
Absolutely. When I was thinking of an exercise specifically about entirety, the first thing that came to me is the difficulty that actors sometimes have in their head and not using their whole body, not recognizing that your whole form is a part of this, and that the energy management is possible for you to move that mountain, even if it's a pebble. And that thought, moving the mountain, it came to me because I'm tied a little bit into what Wil and Lisa, what you were both just talking about, made me think about directing, that every rehearsal, every meeting that you have with designers, with actors, has to be a work of art in your mind, because the opposite direction is not incredibly healthy for yourself. So when you think about each of those rehearsals as a work of art, when your actor or a set piece or something doesn't follow, create what you thought was going to happen before you walked in, you say yes to it. You say it's perfect. You recognize that missing puzzle piece in that day. I'm not going to say that all of those things came to me when I was thinking about moving the mountain, but the image of all of us together moving the mountain was what really inspired that exercise, and how, as theater practitioners, as humans, we have to rely on each other to move those mountains, and sometimes even to move the pebble.
And applying it to directing, and I'm sure this has happened to all of us as directors, that sometimes that set piece is now on stage and it's not exactly what you had seen in the drawing, or they weren't able to build it quite the right way. And all of a sudden, no, somebody can't come behind it as you had worked on for weeks to block it out, and now they have to go in front of it. But again, if you accept that with a sense of ease and decide that that has a sense of wholeness to it right there, and a sense of beauty to it, you'll create a new form that can even be better than what you had previously planned, as long as you're accepting and open to it. and not just getting frustrated and complaining. And, if that's what it is, that's what it is. So accepting that and finding what that new path is. So I think, again, that's where these four brothers come in your work as a director. So that's what that made me think about, Jeffrey, when you were just talking, because I certainly have that happen, and I've had to recreate entrances and exits again after the set was there. It didn't quite work out the way we thought.
It's an acceptance of what I thought was imperfection, being, quote, a perfectionist, and being able to accept what I thought was imperfection, but it's not imperfection, because what you've told me is that's really perfect as it is right there. And getting rid of the idea, as Will said, quit griping about it and look at this new thing as it really is perfect as it is. That's really interesting to me. That's a good lesson for me. Instead of saying, "Oh well, it should have been," and Will said, "This is what it is right now, and it's perfect as it is, or is it near perfect as it's going to be?" And stop judging. That to me that's the lesson I got today, is judgment of what it is right now. I found myself in your exercises a while ago, every movement I made, I was always reaching. There was never a complete anything. That was a good exercise for me, being not knowing what the hell I'm doing here, but that was good. That was really good. Thank you for sharing that with me. Because reaching continuously is not accepting what's here.
That's a wonderful observation. That is that yearning to it, which is that reach that you were talking about, Charlotte, that's absolutely. And once you accept what it is, then you come back onto balance. And speaking of balance, I loved what you brought for us, standing on one foot, and that exercise. What I have had many injuries in my career as a stunt woman and as a human being, athletic human being and controversial human being. And so the actual physical struggle for balance, being able to walk, and the chronic falls and things like that. So it's so interesting when we think about our feet and how they relate to the entire body as that balance point. One of my physical therapists said one of the most important things we can do, especially as we get older, but is when we're sitting, to make sure we point and flex and rotate our ankles, because we start shuffling as we're walking instead of rolling through. So we're no longer using our entire foot. And when we walk this way, we're much more prone to stumble and fall. And this, and again, it affects your entire body when your ankles lose their flexibility. And what you were saying is just focusing, for example, on putting your weight on one side, and you think you're just working one little part, but the whole body, the entire body is experiencing this feeling of the whole. And so that really reminded me, your exercise really reminded me of that. I definitely liked that. I was hiking the other day and had a little 6-year-old girl who was hiking with us, and she got a boo-boo on her knee. And so I got out my little first aid kit and I cleaned it off, and I was going to put a Band-Aid on it. And she said, "No, it still hurts. Doing that is going to make it hurt more." And I realized that she had a needle of a cactus. It was very hair thin. And so I pulled out my trusty, knife with the tweezers, and she went into a screaming fit, and her dad and her uncle held her, and she was like, no, don't touch me. And when she jerked her knee away from me, it went into profile, and I could actually see the needle sticking out of her knee, and it was now, barely thicker than a fingernail. And I grabbed it while she was screaming, saying, no, don't do it. And it was already out. It was already gone. She was crying and said, I don't want her to do it. And I was like, Haley, it's right here. See it? And you can barely see this little teeny thing. But it's an example of how a violation of the feeling of the whole, one teeny little point on her body, was shattering the lives of 4 people. So once she saw that it was out and she felt whole again, she instantly could stop crying. And so a great deal of time, perception is the culprit, the thing that creates the pain, is the perception that we didn't get it done, that it's not finished. And I really want to talk for a moment about the exercise I did in class, in an expanded class. What I would recommend is that you work in pairs and that you have a witness, and you could work in trios, in triads, if you want 2 people watching 1 person, and watch that person make these decisions about, okay, now I'm going to sit. So I'm up, and the question comes, where does it actually begin? Does it begin when I take my first step? Does it begin on some internal level of, okay, go? And if my body and my internal commitment aren't in alignment, I come up with some kind of little hesitant moment that starts to show up. Maybe it's just a tempo shift, some kind of lack of clarity. And I don't know if any of you experience that, like, am I supposed to go now? When should I go? Should I go? And what we'd like to do is develop the ability to make a clear inner commitment and just decide. In the same way that where we had the stops and decide, this is what I meant to be, and from here, I'm going to get over to there. Oh, and I start to go there and I get here, and oh, that's all I meant. So make a clear decision. And this really, this process of doing it, having witnesses, when you do something simple like stand up, walk to the chair, sit down, rise up, come back to your start point, then you fly back and you want to decide and be able to say, I started at this moment and this was my end. And you want to see whether or not your witnesses saw anything different. Did they see a series of false starts? Did they see 3 different endings? And this concept of having 3 different endings is very, very common. And you see it in ensemble movement a lot, where people don't trust to stop and hold it, or they wait to move. Am I supposed to move? They sort of move. And when we have our harmonious groupings and our full pauses, if one part of your body is moving, it's no longer a full pause, and it changes the form, changes the meaning, changes the atmosphere, changes the dynamic for the entire frame, whatever that is. If it's a solo event or an ensemble event, if you think you're in a pause, a complete pause, and part of you is wobbling, you're not. And even if it's your earring, right? So I wore dangly earrings, just, I don't know if you can see that. That I can pause. The pause is not actually complete until all of the images are paused. So when it's not complete, it's changing the impact on the spectator. And we want to know what that is. We want to know what incompletion does inside of us as an artist as well. And let's just wrap this up. Do we feel complete? This is the conclusion of our series on the four brothers of art, the feeling of ease, beauty, entirety, and form. And we, of course, use our the languaging very frequently of entirety for the feeling of the whole, so that we can have this wonderful process that we wait for it. The final form is coming. Here we are. When things are not going well, it is generally because your perception of something ugly. What is that something? The form of something. Or your perception that it's not complete causes you to lose your feeling of ease. You lose your feeling of ease, things get ugly. Usually you're uneasy over the form. Maybe it's time, maybe it's your wallet, maybe it's lack of support, whatever it is, health. So these four brothers all work together, and when you line them up this way, they spell beef, right? So when things are not going well, you can always ask yourself, where's the beef? And by remembering to look for the beauty, to breathe and move with a feeling of ease, to perceive entirety all around you, and to appreciate your form and the form of all that is within and around you, then the your life will be lived in that dynamic flow. So thank you guys for joining us.
See you all.
Wait, stop recording because I have a question. If you're going to do something like this again, what do I need to do to get prepared other than going back through my entire Chekhov book, which I do every once in a while, but I haven't touched it in a long time?
We will announce the topic, and
okay.
Just refresh yourself with the topic.
Okay.
And like what you did was beautiful. And so be confident about that, and trust that you can improvise. And this is an exploration. We're exploring. And if it's a complete disaster, you can always say, Lisa, I'd really prefer you edit that out.
Well,
and I will.
I think you probably need to edit everything that I did or said. I was gonna not join with video actually, but
no, Charlotte.
Anyway.
Charlotte, you are beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh.
I definitely learned so much just from watching and listening to you. You were very wise. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate this because let me tell you, out here in Dallas, Texas, sometimes it's the pits, and I had to see Lisa and Will, and so thank you very much. I'm happy to meet you, Jeffrey. Okay, I'll look for the next announcement.
You, Charlotte.
Okay, I'll look for the next announcement then, and I'll go back to my book. Okay, it's dark here. I may have to order a new one.
Yeah, Charlotte, we are going to do a live training here in August, probably at UTA in Arlington.
Are you really?
We're going to do it live.
My favorite person is...
One minute on your imaginary bodies.
We took a scene from Golden Boy. We all did the same scene.